All right, this is going to be a video about suturing the instruments, how to move them, how to use them, basic techniques, basic thought processes in terms of how to get it done. So basically, you're going to start off with your instruments. You have a forcep, people call them pickups, but that's not technically correct. This is your needle driver, and this is your scissors. So scissors, I'm just going to show real quick. Basically, just like scissors at home, they open, close, you cut with them. Generally speaking, instruments in surgery, we hold with the first and the fourth finger, okay? So that's the general rule. You don't have to put your fingers through them. You can put them in the edge. You want to have facility, meaning movement and use of the instrument without being bound to them, okay? So I'm going to put that aside. So the forceps, basically, you're going to hold tissue, you're going to manipulate tissue. This one has teeth on it at the very ends. Some of them do not, and the ones that do not are called smoothies. They are very hard to grasp tissue with, but they are also less dangerous to the actual tissue. The teeth themselves can create tissue damage. So you have to be careful with them, and we'll go over later on how to use them appropriately. The last part is the needle driver. So the needle driver basically has a locking mechanism at the bottom that helps you hold things. You can hold things without holding on to the other side. Again, first finger and fourth finger, you'll notice my second finger acts like a bridge or a stabilizer. And then the part that holds the needle is fairly flat, but it has little ridges to hold it a little bit easier, okay? So when you hold these instruments, basically you're going to hold them, again, first and fourth finger. You can hear a click when you lock them. When you unlock them, you're basically pushing the thumb part away for a right hand. It's the opposite for a left hand, okay? So you're going to push away, and then you can squeeze and lock, okay? If you notice, I'm going to hold this stable, so I'm pushing away, unlocking it, opening it, and then closing it, okay? So that's how you use them. Now, different sutures. Let me move this away. There are different types of sutures. Some are called monofilament, meaning they have one strand. Some are braided, like this Ethibond. They are actually a few strands wrapped together like braiding hair. Some are absorbable, like the Ethicon. This will take a few weeks to completely resorb into the tissue. Of note, absorbable sutures rely on an inflammatory reaction to resorb, and because of that, you can get swelling and sometimes a response called a vicral spitting. We call that when the body is actually trying to expel the suture from the body. That usually happens at about 4 to 6 weeks, if it's going to happen. It's not that common, but it's common enough that you will see this. The non-absorbable sutures are just that. They don't absorb. They're there permanently. And that's because certain tissues need to heal on a longer time frame, more in the 10 to 12 week or 3-month time frame to completely heal. And the absorbable sutures don't last long enough to make that happen. You'll also notice that different needles have different sizes of curvature. There are different types of needles. Some are tapered, which means it's not super sharp. They're not going to cut tissue when you put them in. And some are cutting or reverse cutting, and they have different reasons for that. So when you do suturing, we're going to show you just on a little cloth right now. And basically, let's just get one of these out. So this one just happens to have multiple sutures in there. I'm just going to take one out for you. So you have your needle, you have your suture thread. This is called a swedged needle, meaning the suture is actually built into the needle itself. Sometimes you can have a free needle, which has a little loop to put the suture through. When you do suturing, you have to make use of the curve, okay? The curve is what makes it work. So you don't want to force things straight when you have a curve, all right? Use the curve as it's meant to be, okay? So you're going to use a lot of what we call supination, pronation. Pronation is when your palm is down. Supination is when your palm is up. So this rotation makes use of the needle itself. So when you do a suturing technique, you want to enter the skin or the tissue at an angle that uses the needle. Okay, so the needle is going to come in at an angle, and then you're going to use the curve to create the effect. So in this angle, what you're going to see is you can load it a little bit angled. You can load it 90 degrees, usually a little bit past the half. That's what I like. If you use it at the end, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting your needle in the right place to start. If you're too short, you may not get your needle through the tissue well enough. So I always go back just a little bit past halfway. Okay, so when we do this, we're going to pronate our hand so that the entry is such, and then you supinate your hand to allow the curvature of the needle to come through. And there's the end of the needle. So I'm not going to use the forceps right now. Basically, you can do these little advancements in the needle. And again, I'm using the curvature of the needle to handle that. Okay. So if I want to take this out, I can grab it. I'm going to use the curve again. There's my pass. Okay. So now if I want to use my forceps, basically I'm going to, again, pronate, enter the needle, I'm going to supinate, so use the curve of the needle. I'm using a piece of paper here so it's moving around. And then use your curvature of the needle. And then at this point, if I wanted to use my forceps, I could grab the needle, stabilize it. And there's a few different ways you can handle this. You could theoretically pull the needle out with the forceps. Again, using the curvature. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Second way to do it is to, again, use your pronation, use your supination, curve through. So my hand's now facing relatively upward. I can stabilize it again. And then I can advance it and stabilize it. Then the other way you can do it is you can actually reload the needle driver in this position, stabilizing it with your forceps. Okay, you can let go at this point, and you always use your forceps as a guide or a helpful hand to hold things in still. Okay, so now actually I'm already reloaded. I could do another stitch. If I didn't want it tight at this point, I could do this again. Okay, and as I showed a little bit earlier, I didn't really mention it, but I can actually push this through, and if the tissue is stable enough, then you could advance this through without using the forceps per se and reload it as well. So these are all different ways you can use the needle driver. This is technically what we call a double pass. So this is, if I tied this now, it would look like a figure 8. Okay, so then the sutures would cross this way, and that would be your suture. So take that out. If you have problems with your needle and you passed it through, you can hold the suture, grab it. You can safely, with your fingers away from the needle, grab the needle and reset it. This is typically how it's done when you start. And then, as we demonstrated just now, you can use your forceps and re-grasp it.